right, Don, we're going to go round two on kicking off the Books for Guys podcast today. How are you this week?
Just fine. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I was telling you, I'm in a neighborhood where they're redoing all the power lines and all the internet cabling. And sometimes it messes with the Wi-Fi. Second time's a charm, right?
So we'll be fine.
Well, man, it is so good to finally meet you face to face, as we got to talk on the phone for a while a few weeks back and got to learn a little bit about your story and about your book, and I can't wait to share it with others. As I'm a big fan of I learned a lot about you. You've been involved with sports law for a long time. You had just great stories of working with different athletes and some of your connections, and then obviously writing this book about your time with your dad. And so, Don, just for those who've never met you before, talk a little bit about your story and just kind of, your background of getting into law, and then what kind of led you to writing this book of yours.
I've been practicing law for 35 years now. Graduated from University of Virginia Law School in 1990. 1990 actually was the same year that UVA was ranked number one in the country for a couple of weeks with Sean Moore and Herman Moore, Terry Kirby, Chris Slade, that group of athletes. So I graduated from UVA a couple of months before that. Came back home, initially practiced with a firm that did corporate tax, municipal bond work. After a period of time, I decided that I wanted to make a change in the type of work that I was doing. So after a couple of years, after 2 years, I wound up establishing my own practice with a focus on sports. A lot of people questioned my sanity at that time. Didn't believe that it would be possible for me to establish the type of work practice that I wanted to in Montgomery. Montgomery being a small town, small market town.
Yeah.
At that time, no professional sports at all, although now we've got a AA Southern League team.
Yeah.
And started this type of work in 1992, principally representing baseball players and football players. And in turn, it sort of morphed and added on NCAA regulatory work representing coaches, student athletes, universities. And it's now sort of expanded outward to a point where I represent stakeholders in sports, from equipment manufacturers to athletes from virtually all over the world.
You've probably seen a lot of changes over the last several years in just the entire landscape.
It's on the collegiate side, there have been significant changes. I'd like to think that the work that we've done have contributed to those changes, in particular the transfer portal and interpretations of bylaw 12, the amateurism bylaw, because we've had some fairly aggressive fights over the years over transfer issues. And finally, after years and years and years of fights, finally, lawsuits were filed over violations of Section 1 of the Sherman Act, and all of these actions were restraints on trade, and that brings us up through today. I'm not convinced that the current system is what many people had envisioned it to be. But as with any reform, whether it's forced or voluntary, it'll take a little time for people to adjust to the new system, and college sports will be just as popular as it always has been. This has been the best college football season I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And frankly, I'm thrilled that University of Virginia is currently ranked number 12 in the country. So it's been an outstanding season.
Yeah. No, I was curious. It's just interesting to get your take on it, because you've been involved in it for so long. But I think the change happened so quickly over the last 4 to 5 years, where there's been so much change in before. Things took a long time. So it's taken people a little bit off guard by just how fast the landscape changed. But
it really hasn't been. It's been it was dumped on fan bases,
Hmm.
but it's been an ongoing process. A lot of the things that happened were things that happened behind the scenes. There was litigation, there were administrative fights that have literally literally predated my involvement in the profession.
Yeah.
Um, but then 7, 8, 10 years ago, um, there was a shift and everything started to be dumped onto fan bases without a whole lot of explanation, and that's led to a good bit of confusion and
Yep.
complaining, and uh, no one's happy. Well, I won't say that no one's happy. A lot of schools are happy because in the old system they weren't competing for a national championship game. Now with a 12-team playoff,
Yeah.
with the transfer portal, with NIL availability for athletes, there are more people that are happy with the system than there are
Yeah.
people that are unhappy with it now.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm a fan. Obviously, I'm a former athlete. Go to a lot of
Hmm.
games, and just as much as I complain sometimes, I've never been more interested. And so, I think it'll continue as, like you said, things just came on us so fast. We didn't really know what to expect. But I think over time, all that will kind of level out, and there won't be as many of these discussions of confusion because we'll be used to it. But it is an interesting time in collegiate athletics.
Indeed, it is. The NCAA could have done a much better job of preparing fan bases, preparing member institutions for the shift. They were very resistant to voluntarily modifying their bylaws to allow for more freedom for transfers, to allow student athletes to profit off their name, image, and likenesses. And as a result of that, we're now left with a system that fans are adjusting to. But as they adjust, this has probably been the most watched college football regular season in history.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking forward to a 12-team playoff this year.
Me too. Me too. And you'd kind of laugh. Me and my old teammates, we talk about we missed the transfer and NIL boat by about 5 years, and we were like, man, there's never been a better time to be an athlete than right now.
Wonderful. So it's a wonderful time. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
great time to be. I mean, maybe I'm not so happy about the idea of young people transferring. They start out in one school, they transfer after their freshman year, transfer after their sophomore year, transfer after their junior year. Maybe that's not the system that anyone ever intended. I think that goes outside of that has nothing to do with higher education.
Yeah.
But I think even those types of transfers will start to level out some,
Yeah.
and we'll get back to a more manageable system.
Yep. No, I agree. I agree. But it's very cool that you've been involved in these inner workings for a long time, and now you're kind of seeing it all come to fruition on kind of what you fought for and the athletes you represented. And and again, just kind of there were some things that needed to change, and it
Sure.
changed quickly. And like you said, though, I think things will level out for the better of the overall sport and the athletes and the fans too. It'll all play itself
Mhm.
out. But it's very interesting to talk to someone who's been a little bit more on the inside, like yourself, and seen the behind the scenes battles and kind of what's been fought for. And so, um, but translating that over to your book, Don, going a little bit different route, you
Mhm.
I don't want to say anything. I want you to tell your story on just kind of what led you to writing that book and putting pen to paper and sharing the story that you did.
My father went into the hospital on the 16th of February 2024. So from the 16th of February 2024 through the 12th of March of 2024, he was hospitalized. During that entire time I made a decision to come off the road, and every day I spent in the hospital. Well, every day with the exception of one, I spent in the hospital with him. During that time, my oldest brother and I, and my son who lives in Great Britain, interacted with him every day. Quite often, my son would be on either Zoom or FaceTime communicating with him. My relationship with my father was very unique. I mean, when my father was healthy, I quite literally, as an adult, talked to him 10, 11, 12 times a day. My days start at irregular hours. So I would literally talk with him 4 or 5 times before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I would work out. I get up. My day starts at around 1 o'clock a.m. because of the work that we do outside the United States.
Yeah.
And my son and my son lives in Europe. So my days would start early. I talk to him constantly. Quite often those conversations drifted back to sports. My dad was a public school administrator for almost 40 years. He was my middle school principal. Everything in his life revolved around family, his faith, his community, education, and sport. Those were the five foundational principles of his life. I don't think I fully recognized that until my final 24 days with him. I knew the things that were important to him. I knew the things that guided him every day. I knew the things that he instilled in my brothers, and me. Both my brothers were college athletes. I was a college athlete. I knew the things that he instilled in us, but I don't think I fully recognized the importance of these things to him until those final 24 days. And in that respect, those last 24 days with him were the most significant, enlightening, educational, and painful days of my life. I learned, I listened, I watched, and I grieved. So as I was going through the final stages of his life, those final days of his life, I was communicating with one of my mentors about his condition by email and also over the phone. And she advised me, you need to put your thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
And it just never crossed my mind. I had written a book back in 2007, but writing about this just never crossed my mind. But every day I had my iPad in the room with me because I was constantly working. And I started to take notes. If we had a conversation about something on day 1, I would take notes. I took notes. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. Every day I took notes. He died on March 14th. So during the summer of 2024, I was literally sitting at my house early one morning working. And I went back and I started looking at my notes because that was the first time emotionally that I was really capable of doing that.
Yeah.
I started to look at these notes, and when I started looking at the notes, I started to write. Day 1 was February 16th. Day 2, day 3. There are 24 chapters in the book.
Yep.
Each chapter is a different day. Each chapter begins with a quote, either something that he said to me during that 24-day period or something that he said to me repeatedly in my life. And every chapter covers a different aspect of our relationship. When I started to write, I initially started to write about my relationship with him. But then I realized at a certain point that I couldn't write about my relationship with him unless I wrote about his history, about his life, about my family's history, and and about the history of the area where I'm from. And before you knew it, I'd written a 24-chapter book that covered his time as an educator, that covered his time as a coach, that covered his time as a high school basketball referee in the 1960s, and even talked about some of the people that he interacted with during that during that era. He refereed a high school basketball game. He refereed one of Artis Gilmore's high school basketball games. And he told me the story about slipping down on sweat or water on the floor during a basketball game here in Central Alabama. And he looked back and he's got these players barreling up the court uh, towards him. He didn't have time to get up and get up and get off. So he crawled from roughly the free throw line extended all the way to the baseline. So at that time, I was a high school basketball player. So he's telling me the story, and I asked him about, well, what did you do when you got to the baseline? Well, what would you do? I got up. He told me when I was 8 years old, he helped to create two all-black baseball leagues. He integrated a league in Millbrook, Alabama with the Dixie Majors team. My older brothers were players on that team. And there were a number of other guys on that team that wound up with sons and nephews that wound up being major college football players, NFL players, college coaches, NBA draft picks. Well, that league, my father's team wound up making it to the championship in that league. They played against a team from Hopeful, Alabama, which was in the county where I grew up. The head coach of that team was Kirby Smart's father. My dad exposed me to sports all throughout my life. And I guess it's really not accidental that I wound up doing what I do right now for a living. I teach sports law. I've been practicing in this area for over 3 decades. I guess it's not accidental, but in a really unusual way, I can now look back and understand things about him and about his life that maybe I couldn't understand when I was 15, 20, 25, 30. It's unfortunate that I didn't get a full understanding until till the end of his life, but I was fortunate that I did.
Yeah.
And I also, much of the book is devoted to my son's relationship with him. My son is Theodore the Third. Well, my father literally retired as a public school administrator to babysit my son.
Yeah.
And a good bit of the book is devoted to their relationship and the impact that he had in my son's life. It was a book that I never anticipated writing. That every night, every time I sat down to write, after 20 minutes, I would literally be in tears.
Yeah.
And after writing for an hour or a couple of hours, I felt like I had run a marathon.
Yeah.
But in the end, I was satisfied with the product. And so far, the response has been very, very good.
Yeah. Well, he sounds like an incredible man and sounds like an incredible person that I'm glad you took on the responsibility of sharing his stories and his life and your son's relationship with him, because those words will and his stories will live on forever now because you took on that task of sharing that with others. Um, yeah, and just the dynamics of father and son and learning from him and those stories and all too often, you do hear that, you don't think about things until, that you are at the end with somebody and you really deep dive into things you just, again, you don't really do in day to day and until those moments come. But it's really, really cool that you got to experience those days with your father and were able to take some of those lessons and write about them and just get that experience during that time. That's really powerful.
He used sport. He used the game to educate a group or several groups of restless young men. Myself
Yeah.
being, I was one of those young men. My older brothers and guys in their generation, they were they were a part of teams that he coached. He used sports as a way to educate us and as a way for us to see possibilities. I didn't realize that. I mean, I'll be frank with you. The pastor that did the religious eulogy at my father's funeral was one of my former classmates and high school basketball teammates and baseball teammates. But he was also an All-American running back in high school. He signed the University of Alabama out of high school, Andrew Gilder. He was one of the most highly recruited players in the country coming out of high school. At my father's funeral, he talked about the impact that he had on his life. And when I heard that, it just made my knees buckle because I'd always seen him in a certain way, but I really didn't understand how other people saw him.
Yeah.
He was dad to me. I love my father, loved him more than anyone on earth. But I never fully understood how the impact that he had on the lives of others.
Yeah.
Well, in the case of Andrew, he actually requested probably 15 years before he died that Andrew and another one of my former teammates and one of his former students and former players conduct his funeral. The other teammate unfortunately died in 2022, and obviously wasn't around in March of 2024. But the book is about his commitment to education and my family's commitment to education. Within the context of the book, I actually went back 7 generations in my family. That research was not done for this book. That research started in 1983 when I started researching my family's history when I worked at a probate office in the summers when I was in college, and then the summer before my senior year, the summer and my entire senior year, I worked at the Alabama Department of Archives and History, and I started to do this research on my family. So when I started to write this book, I incorporated all of these things about the history of my family and about the history of the county that I was from and about the history of central Alabama. All of those things that impacted, I couldn't write about my relationship with my father unless I wrote about the historical things that impacted his life.
Yeah.
Because that added context to why he raised me the way that he raised me and why he raised my brothers the way that he raised us.
Yeah.
And it was I, based on what I had been told by a number of people. A lot of college coaches and college programs had purchased the books and distributed them to their players. Based on what I've been told by people that have read it, it's a story that I think has benefit, or they believe has benefit to young people, to young athletes in particular.
Yeah.
Although the focus wasn't on sports is such a vital part of my life that everything was sort of pulled back to sports in a really unusual way.
Yeah. Well, it's I think people sometimes underestimate the power of sports and the lessons you can learn from them. As a former athlete, there's so many lessons I learned. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the people that poured into my life, and there's coaches that I'll forever be grateful for, and there's teammates I'll have lifelong relationships with, and it's super cool that your dad understood the correlation just between education and sport, and he intertwined those things for you guys because they go hand in hand. And that's, again, I'm kind of like you. I have such a soft spot for athletes and young athletes, and that's kind of the purpose of Books for Guys, is just kind of encouraging those young men to look up to people like yourself, and they're trying to get to certain levels, and there's blueprints there and stories that they can read and learn about people. And and again, use that information to help get to where they want to go and what they want to accomplish. And so it's refreshing, and just I just love hearing stories like this about like your dad and just his belief in education and sport and just those lessons he taught you, even though you didn't really know that the lessons at the time.
No, I didn't. I did. That's the unusual. When I was a middle schooler, my grades were good, but I just didn't have, one of my brothers was a college baseball player at that time.
Hmm.
The other brother was a high school football player. He wound up being a super all state player in the state of Alabama, made some all American teams, played in the Alabama high school all star
Nice.
game back in summer 1978. But I was trying to figure it all out. I'll be frank with you. I wasn't overly interested in school.
Yeah.
My grades were good,
Yeah.
but my mother's a teacher, my dad was a principal, but I wasn't interested in school.
Yeah.
My dad realized that. He realized that. But he also realized that I spent all of my time rummaging around on the backs of baseball cards and football cards and basketball cards and Sports Illustrated and Sport Magazine and the Baseball Digest.
Yeah.
He knew the things that occupied me. But math and reading about Jack and Jill and Tom Sawyer just didn't interest me, okay? So he took the unusual approach. I can't say that this would work for everybody. He took the unusual approach of just bombarding me with books about sports. If that's the only thing that this kid wants to read,
Yep.
and that's the only thing that he wants to do. I'm just gonna buy him all these sports books. So you have these, what do you call it? Weekly reader.
Yeah.
You order books, these little paperback books, and then 4 weeks later they pop up at your school.
Yeah.
Man, he would order 10, 15 books, and they're all about sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was some history, you know, there were books like that. But he bought me this book called A Sense of Where You Are. It was a biography of Bill Bradley. And he also bought a book that was written by Harry Edwards Jr. Harry Edwards Jr. was the person behind John Carlos and Tommy Smith's protest in the 1968 Olympics. He started the Olympic Committee for Human Rights because he knew that I was searching. He knew that I was searching. I'm a good athlete. I excel in sports. My grades are great, but I was a little bit lost. I won't even deny it. And I spent, frankly, when I started reading then, I don't think I've ever stopped. And it's always been about sports. And I'm not sure that that's a perfect way for anybody to become interested in education,
Yeah.
but it certainly worked in my situation.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I would have been as
Yeah.
interested in academics. And there's really no surprise that I wound up doing what I do for a living,
Yeah.
because I was bombarded with it every day.
Yeah.
And
Well,
my father,
I love that exact story, Don, because I'm very similar. Yeah, I was the kid reading Sports Illustrated books. I was telling a former sports writer yesterday, I was the kid that I had a bedtime, so I had to record Monday Night Football so I could finish it after school on Tuesday because I'd have to be in bed by
Mhm.
halftime. But I really only enjoyed reading sports biographies and sports stories. But that translated into me reading leadership books from coaches like Coach Tony Dungy and some of these guys. And then it led into business books and other type of books. And that's kind of, again, the purpose behind Books for Guys is, man, if
Mhm.
you want to be the best basketball player ever, well, let's go read about Kobe Bryant, or, let's go read about Michael Jordan. If that's what you're interested in, you can still read and learn about these guys and read what you're interested in. It's okay to do that. And that's better than nothing, and it leads to learning and growth and in just the same way.
Thing about me, the thing that I think was fairly unusual, and I've told my son about this throughout his entire life, is I was all, I grew up in the era of Julius Erving, of Dr. J,
Yeah.
and the ABA and the NBA merged in 1976. So I remember I was 10 years old when the leagues merged. So I remember all of that. But the players that I identified with were not necessarily the players that led teams in scoring. My favorite player was Bill Bradley. Tom McMillan, who played for the Atlanta Hawks in the late 70s, early 80s, was one of my favorite players.
Nice.
Well, the thing that those two players had in common was the fact that they were both Rhodes Scholars. Tommy Millen played at Maryland. Bill Bradley played at Princeton. Then they both went to Oxford. Then they went to the NBA. The players that I identified with and the players that incited interest in me were players like Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and others that had a life outside of sports.
Mm-hmm.
You want to excel in sports. I mean, my adopted son was a McDonald's All-American in 2001. My son, baseball, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, he works for English Premier League team
Yeah.
in Great Britain now. He's been there for the last 8 years. Sports is a part of everything that we do in our lives. But I hope, I think, I believe that the lessons that came from me was that sports it's a mean and not an end. It's a vehicle, a lever that you can use to see the world, to get an education, to compete on a high level, to experience things in people that you wouldn't have had you not been involved in sports.
Yep.
But it's not the end. It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. Because of the work that I do, a lot of people look at sports as the light at the end of the tunnel. My father never allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
Not one day. If you can play these different sports, but the very first day that your grades drop,
You're done.
you're done. You were
Yeah.
finished. And you were going to be finished not for a grading period. You're going to be finished for 365 days. And you can count them down.
That's some motivation right there.
Luckily, I never had to test his resolve on that issue. And and I look back, I'm on up pitching in college. So, and I told this story in the book. So when I was young, 8, 9, 10 years old, my father always had me on a pitch count. And he would never allow me, up until the time that I was 12, 13 years old, he would never allow me to go beyond 60 pitches. Once you get to 60, you're going to sit. You're going to another position. You're coming off the mound.
Yeah.
I had a lot of difficulty with 8 times 7. I had a lot of difficulty. I don't know why. 6 times 7, I knew. 7 times 7, 9 times 7. But I had a lot of difficulty with 8 times 7. So on this one day, I'm kind of struggling with my control. I'm probably 7 years old. I think I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, the age that you learn your multiplication tables. Yeah. He comes to the pitcher's mound, and he simply asked me, "What's 8 times 7?" And I'm a small kid, but I remember this like it was yesterday. What's 8 times 7? What the hell is that? Why are you asking? What's 8 times 7? And I thought, 56. And he just turned around and walked back to the dugout. He didn't say anything else. Okay. I wound up getting out of the inning. And he yanked me. Go to second base.
Yeah.
8 times, that was his sign. You're right at this pitch count.
Yeah.
And we had, so I mean, it was just every day of my life, even now, told my brother this morning. Every day, I know that at a certain point, I'll be able to, and I can do it now, be able to just enjoy my relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I can do that to some degree now, but it is very, very painful to look back and think about all these things
Yeah.
and note that he's not here anymore. Um, but he had an impression on me that at 59 years of age. And I see his former students when I'm in Montgomery. I see his former students. I see teachers that worked in schools where he was principal. I see some of his classmates from college and graduate school, and it gives me a lot of pleasure to their stories about him. So I think the book, even though even though the book started out, I believe with one purpose, as I got farther down the road, I think I realized that it had a purpose for other people that was even more important than the purpose than the purpose that he had in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Don, it's an honor to have your book on the Books for Guys website and be able to share the stories that you were able to write about from him and just his life and y'all's intertwined. And so I think a lot of people are going to find some greatness and some lessons in it. And so happy that you took the time to write the book and put those thoughts and those words on paper. Again, it's a pleasure to hear you tell the stories, and I think it's going to be even more enjoyable reading the book now that we all have a little more insight to your father's life and the impact that he had on you and your brothers and so many other people. And so, Don, just this has been amazing. This has been one of my favorite conversations. Just again, being such a fan of sports, but also just hearing the way you talk about your dad and just his impact. I can't wait to read it, and I think so many people that listen to this and watch this are going to feel the same way. And I hope a lot of people get some enjoyment and learn a lot about your dad in this light that you've shared with us, because he just sounds like an incredible person and very cool to learn about him.
Thank you, thank you. Just I look back now, um, at the at the young man that he coached. As I mentioned, a number of whom wound up with sons and nephews that played Major League Baseball, that were draft picks, that were NFL football players. Um, and he created opportunities for them in the 1960s and 70s, at a time when, state of Alabama, the opportunities for young black boys were just not, they were few and far between. Youth leagues, we weren't playing in.
Yeah.
So how did he solve that problem? He and a group of men from around my county started two leagues: a little league, and a Dixie Majors age league. And then he went out and bought a pickup truck, bought a white Ford pickup truck to carry us around, or to carry the little league team and the Dixie Majors team around for games and practices. That was our Los Angeles Dodgers team playing. It was just, when I look back at that, there's a picture in the book of a high school game that I pitched, and then we can close, and of a high school game that I pitched. And on the first base, oh, excuse me, on the third base line behind our dugout, behind our bench, you can, and this is in my senior yearbook. You can see my mother and father sitting in that white Ford pickup truck watching this baseball game. Uh, it's, I could, and the week of my dad's funeral, um, one of my high school teammates, several of my high school teammates, sent that picture to me. Sent that picture to me.
Yeah.
I frankly had forgotten about it. Sent me the picture, and quite ironically, my dad's funeral was at a high school gymnasium, the high school that I graduated. That gymnasium was built on the site of that baseball field.
Wow.
Where
Wow.
that picture was taken, that gymnasium was built on the site of that baseball field.
Wow.
It's at a certain point down the road, I will get to a point where I will be able to just appreciate all of the things that he did
Yeah.
without the pain.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
Yeah. And understandably so. But well, Don, that's an incredible story, and it's been an absolute pleasure to hear you talk about him, and I can't wait to read your book and all the stories, and I can't wait to share it with others, as I know there's a lot of people like myself that I just know is going to love reading about him and his life and the way that you tell the stories about him, and so. Again, thank you so much, Don, for reaching out. Thank you for your support
Thank
of
you.
what we're doing at Books for Guys as well. It means so much, and hopefully we can have as big of impact as your dad did. That would I think that would be the goal after learning about how much of an impact he's had on a lot of young men, and hopefully we can do the same. And we appreciate your help with that.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks, Don.
Thank you.